Jay. Welcome to Mvskoke Radio, your weekly source for tribal and community news, interesting guests and discussions, plus a local events calendar. Jay, Stongo, Gary Fife, Jaho Jeffkados.
Darren, DeLaune, J.O. Jeffkados.
Mvskoke Radio, Mabu Hedges Awedjkis. Thank you for joining us again this week. We have a long-distance discussion going on today, but Darren here is in studio. It's been a little while since you've been back, and we teamed up on something here.
Really has. I mean, I'm not going to say it's like been a long time, but last year I think was the last time.
Year.
So, I mean, but yeah, I mean, it really has. So it's really good to be back with y'all, with you, Gary, and also with Brooks Brewer. I mean, our technical producer here for the station and for our segment. So really good seeing y'all's faces again.
Now, you've been spending a lot of time producing material for Mvskoke Nation News, and it's kind of heavyweight stuff, some of that.
Yeah, it is. Right now we have what we're going on. Of course, we had that UINOKT, United Indian Nations of Oklahoma, Kansas, and Texas. They met. They had their quarterly session. So I went up there and attended that. They had and you might correct me if I'm wrong, Ernie Stevens, National Indian Gaming. He's the chairman, correct?
Correct.
Yeah, he was up there. He was speaking. He was talking about, I guess, the gaming going under the new administration. I guess there's been a lot of questions, but also not those questions, but just any issues dealing with American Indians or Indian country in general. That's what was brought up, and some of those questions were coming up, and Ernie had, he had a lot on his plate at that time, but I mean, he was talking and telling everybody fairly well. I mean, one of the good things that he was bringing up was, I mean, everybody knows about what's going on. I mean, like the past and everything, and that's understandable. I mean, there's a dark side to it, but there's also Native Americans, American Indians are known for moving forward and known for progressing, and that's what he was wanting to bring that up. He was wanting to really put that in the heads, like, we can move forward, whatever impacts us, whatever goes after us, we can move forward, we can still keep going.
Well, this is really important at this point with the new president coming in and settling his administration and things like that. But we have to honestly, point back to a place and time where Mr. Trump was dead set against native gambling as a competitor. He said it was full of organized crime and that we were going to open the doors for those guys to get in and this sort of thing, and even questioned the racial background of the Pequots, who have mixed blood, and he said, well, they don't look like Indians to me. So a lot of people were really nervous about him coming in and what he was going to be sharing, or his direction. Now, did Mr. Stevens talk any of that at all?
He really didn't go into detail. If he did, I wasn't there because I know he had to talk later in that afternoon, and I know we had to get back. Whenever we was there that morning, we came in during his mid session, like whenever he was talking. So he the part that I heard was when he was covering for trying to move forward. So yeah, that issue that you brought up about how President Trump does not was against gaming the casinos for American Indians. I mean, he was big on that, and I'm pretty sure a lot of people have talked to Mr. Stevens personally about that. And those are some big issues that we're going to have to address.
Well, one thing that I kind of happily keep in the back of my mind is his went bankrupt and the Indians didn't.
Yeah, exactly. Ours is still flourishing. I mean, you can tell that by River Spirit, Margaritaville, Hard Rock.
Now, both of us have been there at Margaritaville lately while they've been opening up the rest of their facility to more of a destination adventure kind of spot to visit. And you don't necessarily have to go in there and plug slot machines or anything like that. So that was kind of interesting. And we were both part of the team that covered various aspects.
You know, it was coming up from the, you're talking maybe like, we were there whenever the River Spirit was kind of not an exception, but it was still in the baby phases. And then we were there for the groundbreaking ceremonies of Margaritaville when they were started. I mean, we knew that was going to be a long process. But now we're here, I mean, to see Margaritaville, Paradise Cove, you know, all those things that are belong with that now. I mean, how it's progressing, how it's moving on. I mean,
yeah, it's odd that you mentioned that, because I was part of the crew that was there when they had this long pile of dirt on the stage, and that was their groundbreaking.
I was there too. I was there too. Remember, it was raining that night, and we were going to try to do hot air balloon.
Yeah.
They wanted us to take pictures of the from the hot air balloon, to take pictures of like where it's going to be at. I was all set for it, but they thought the wind was like going to be. But I was all for it because I was like thinking, okay, Wizard of Oz, Kansas, I can do this. I mean, that could be possible. That would be fun. You know, I could like make something out of nothing and
you never
take a
know.
couple pictures.
You have to be careful. That balloon might have blown you into Kansas.
Yeah, exactly.
You're stuck.
But you know, I mean, with all that, I mean, you know, we had a lot of like, I mean, I'm not going to say. Well, we'll say setbacks, but I mean, you had that situation with the endangered animal there that's right on the river, how that was stopping production, but you know, they worked around it and they moved on, they moved forward, they progressed. I mean, there's still some things going on, but you know, they're trying to move on. They're trying to get everything going forward. So.
Well, yeah, not to blow their horn too much, but the word spectacular has been attached to that facility a few times. And when we got up in the very top, up in his chief's suite, the really swanky place where all of the top VIPs, it was. I mean, you could see the Tulsa skyline and way off into Sand Springs. You turn and look the other way, and you can almost see Russia from here.
I would have been past it, yeah. But yeah, that's one of the things that, I mean, they brought up was about the gaming. You know, I'm pretty sure there's other issues coming up because there's like a lot of like presentations that were going on that day. Unfortunately, we just couldn't stay for it. We had to get back.
Yeah.
So, but I mean, there's other things that's going on right now. Dealt with the poverty awareness seminar. Was a part of that last week. It was just
right. We had Mr. Pendergrass, Mark Pendergrass, on to talk about that. We kind of laughed about, we didn't know we were poor until somebody told us, you know, that kind of thing. But he talked practical solutions and ways to approach the problem. Like, okay, well, you need to get some training. There is no free handout here. You know, the catch is you have to be involved with some sort of job or employment training, this kind of thing. That was good. Now, we've done a lot of cooperation with the TV crew and, of course, the newspaper. And, of course, we even have Devaney Luxinger in here with us shooting our promo today.
Yeah, I know. And Devaney does a great job. One of the great things about Devaney, too, is like she just recently wrote an article about, I mean, in her first article, as a matter of fact. And it was very, very good. And honestly, you can tell that, I mean, it's full of life. It's vibrant, even with the subject that she had to like do. But you could just tell that in her writing that how well she did. And I mean, it's just another tool that she's going to have put on her, and it's just going to get sharper and sharper as she goes along.
Right.
One thing, Gary, I was wanting to bring up, and I'm going to need your help with this, and with your listeners. I am stuck. I need a column idea, and I need y'all to. I need the listeners, if you got an idea, if y'all have read my columns before, you know I talk about human peace stories, you know, little stuff like that. But I am drawing a blank right now. I've been drawing a blank for about 3 weeks now, and it's like really bothering me. So, I mean, Gary knows what I like to write. Hopefully the viewers, if you read our newspaper, you know what I like to write. So please call my extension 918-732-7703 and give me an idea. Help me out. Thank you.
I'm sure you're going to get a pretty wild collection there. But here's one. We're hearing the first announcement of the first Wild Onion Dinner for this year.
Already.
Elkhurst, West Tulsa, the Indian Fellowship Church. at 6130 South 58th West Avenue. So there might be something you might want to follow up.
I might have to look into that, yeah, because matter of fact, yesterday we had an elderly couple that came in, cute couple and everything, and the first thing, they were asking to be put on the mailing list, but their second question was, when's the Wild Indian Dinner going to start?
Mm-hmm.
We've been waiting patiently, so
I know, yeah.
And like the rest of us, so we all have.
You got it. Now it's here. The first one, now that's coming up, I believe, this weekend.
Mm-hmm.
$10 a plate, and the usual kind of fixings and that sort of thing.
Well worth it, ladies and gentlemen. Please go over there and get
6130 South 58th West Avenue. That's West Tulsa, just, I believe, south of Sand Springs.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, let's see now. What have we got lined up today? We have a nice chat with an author who's got an unusual subject.
Yes, late last year we spoke with T.D. Hill. He was he told us about his new book and the background that went into it. And the book is the Age of Myths and Legends, Book 1, and it's about it's about monsters.
Monsters.
Or Native, just Native American folklore. So so we'll be getting on with him here pretty soon. I want to take a little break so we can get him on the line, and we can go in there and just go into a little bit more of a background of how he got this, how this book came to be.
All right, we'll ask folks to stay with us here on 1240 The Brew, Mvskoke Radio. We'll be speaking with T.D. Hill, so hang in there.
I started doing it when I was 11. I wanted to be just like my big brother. And some of my friends were already doing it. We got hooked fast. I just can't get enough. I'm Jacob, and I'm addicted to playing the drums.
There's lots of stuff that makes it cool to be Native. Doing meth isn't one of them. Find something better to do. Check out ncai.org. A message from the Partnership for a Drug-Free America and the National Congress of American Indians.
One Fire Casino in Okmulgee offers Ladies' Day every Monday with $5 match play, VIP days for seniors on Tuesdays, lunchtime match plays on Wednesdays and Thursdays, and several other great drawings and prizes throughout the weekend. Don't forget to take advantage of spinning the wheel on Sundays to win up to $5,000 cash. Be sure to check out the daily meal specials at Council Oak Cafe. There are exciting monthly giveaways with extravagant prizes. Come and play at One Fire Casino, where it really is okay to play with fire.
Welcome back to Mvskoke Radio. Gary Fife, Darren, DeLaune here to be able to talk with individual who went to kind of like a globe trotting to get a new book going. And one of the reasons why we wanted to bring them back was our producer here of Mvskoke Radio, Gary Fife. At one time, he brought up how the winter months are storytelling time. And the reason why, and whenever I think of storytelling, I think of sitting in your front room, evening, by the fire. The fire's going. Well, for me, it was a space heater. But you just hear all these stories about, just like whether they were scary stories or just stories in general. But it was always a great time, a comfortable time. It was a time that brought up my childhood, and I'm pretty sure it brought up a lot of childhood, maybe for you too, Gary?
Right. Now, the time period you're referencing is, of course, the early days as colonialism was settling into the country, and you had everything from the Plains tribes sitting in their teepees around a fire and doing the mending of their weapons or clothing, and then our own people inside their lodges doing the same things. Too darn cold to go out and mess around.
Exactly.
But that's a time when the elders would share the wisdom and saying, well, to teach the little guys, don't go out there and don't mess with this, and here's why.
Yeah, exactly. And we got one person who's not that old yet, but he does have a lot of knowledge, and he goes by the name of T.D. Hill. T.D., how you doing?
I'm doing good. Thanks for having me.
No problem. Well, T.D., we had you on late last year. We were talking to you about your book that, came to be and what has been going on. But we also wanted to, like we said, we didn't have enough time to be able to cover everything. So I wanted to bring Gary along this time, and because he's got a wealth of knowledge also. But we were wanting to, just go ahead and, we can just, first question is, how did this book come to be, or what was the inspiration for this book?
It was really, I guess you could say, two seeds. The first was I ran into a book, I think I was in the third or fourth grade, It was written by Time Life Books, and it was a book on folklore and mythology, but it was European. Had really great artwork. The writing was very good. And I started to look for books like that on Native American folklore and mythology, but I couldn't find it. All I was finding were the books that were more in the realm of academia, and most of them were old. Most of them from the early 1900s to the late 1800s, and they were written by ethnologists, and it didn't have the same color, the same kind of storytelling quality to it, you know. And the second part of how this book came about was from my own grandparents. My grandparents were relatively traditional. My granddad was on the powwow circuit. My grandmother was a fluent speaker of the Kiowa language. So I grew up with it, but I took it for granted. You know, I didn't really appreciate it the way I should have. In college, years later in college, I had a sociology assignment, and I was supposed to interview an immigrant family. My instructor told me, you should interview your grandparents. And so I said, okay. So I went back and I recorded them, and I learned, you know, stories I'd never heard before about not just, you know, our family, but about our tribes going back, you know, to pre-colonial times. And it was just kind of an eye-opening experience. And I started to record my grandparents whenever I had a chance. And it just became a habit. I was, a few years later, I was playing on the Native American basketball circuit. And I had a chance to record a lot of different people when I was traveling and share stories with other people. So it's been, you know, it's been a never-ending search for old stories, I guess you could say. And that was the beginning of this book.
Now, TD, I'm Gary Fife, co-piloting today's program. Now, first of all, your book title. Let's share that with our listeners.
And that one is called The Age of Myths and Legends. And I wanted to be a little careful with that one because when we talk about myths, you know, we tend to think, you know, I tend to think of like Greek mythology, Roman mythology, those stories that happened, you know, thousands and thousands of years ago. Our stories, while they're old, they still have they're still tied directly to us in this present day, if that makes any sense. You know, that I wrote in the book that these stories that I wrote about are in that age between myth and memory. And I shared a story last time I was on about my great-grandmother who basically her and the remainder of her tribe, they were attacked by the Osage, and they got away by riding on the back of a fish. It took them across the river, and the fishtail splashed. And she told my grandmother this, and, you know, and I wouldn't call that a myth. You know, that's an old story that has importance for our family and for the Kiowa tribe. So that's why I had a hard time figuring out what to call this book in terms of the title. But that's kind of the, you know, there's really not a word, I guess, for our stories like that fits nicely like that, you know?
Let me ask you kind of a philosophical question here. Many of this type of material, let's call it our own literature, has borne the label of myth and kind of tucked away into children's books or something like that. Now, first of all, is that kind of set the hip fur on the back of your neck standing up? And you know, like, what would you prefer?
That's a really good question. Like I was saying, when I was looking for, you know, the book that I ended up writing, all I found were children's books or the books that were written, you know, again for academia, for, you know, for posterity, and that's great. But they don't seem to, our stories don't seem to carry the same amount of weight with non-Indians as, say, Roman mythology, Greek mythology, Norse mythology. I mean, I think I spoke to Darren about this earlier. You can pretty much ask any kid in this country who is Hercules, and they all know. And Hercules was Roman from thousands of years ago. No one knows who Kesawatz is, or who Manibus is, or Nanabush, or, you know, Glooskap, or, you know, the Zaide Tali, the twin brothers. And those are American. Those are as American as it gets. And that's what kind of bothers me the most, I think, about how our stories are not really given the amount of credence that they should have, you know?
Well, you mentioned Hercules and kids today knowing who he was. Most of them would know him as The Rock, and not actually the son of Zeus and this guy who was commissioned to do these seven labors of Hercules, something like that.
12 labors.
12. Thank you. Yeah, I have to go back and watch that movie again. But there's been kind of a movement among many of the authors that I've spoken with in the last couple of years about saying, no, we kind of need to re-legitimize what we put out. And these stories make just as much sense as the Greek or the Roman or even, later periods. And that we should not be kind of looking at them as some sort of juvenile product or something like that.
Right. And the thing I learned from my granddad about the stories was they weren't just for entertainment. They were.
Oh yeah.
I don't want to call them like a Aesop's fable, but they did have lessons. What he told me is, they would sometimes the elders would tell stories to not to get onto somebody, but to kind of keep somebody in line. If you had, someone who wasn't doing right, you wouldn't go and call that person out in front of everybody and embarrass them. Instead, you would say, "Hey, I'm going to tell a story," and you'd tell a group. And you would tell the story, and it had, meaning to it, to that individual that wasn't doing right. So that way that person saved face, but you still were able to teach something. So they were important teaching tools, our stories. They, like I said, they weren't just for, children.
Right. There was a definite message within the context of that story, like come inside when it gets dark, or something out there will get you, or don't go messing around this water hole, because something will come out of the water and then sweep you away, keep you from being drowned or lost or killed, being on my bear or something like that. Right.
TD, you and Gary were talking about how those stories, just maybe keep you inside. But were there also any stories that, I guess that maybe your grandfather told that might have morals, at the end of this day or at the end of this story, anything like that, similar to that?
Yes, I've heard some, not from him specifically, but I've heard some from other different elders. A real short story that I heard, and it's about the two mouse sisters, and the way it goes is there were two sisters. They were mice. One of them worked hard and was older. The younger didn't really work. She enjoyed to play, and she danced most of the days. And during a certain time of the moon, the older sister knew that the snakes would start to shed their skin. So she waited, and when the snakes shed their skin, she got the skins and she started using them as bags and started filling them up with rice, nuts, kernels, anything she could find, and she built up a really good stash for the coming winter. The younger sister didn't do that. The younger sister was playing and dancing the entire summer up until the fall. When it started to get cold, she said, "Hey, I don't have anything." So she went to go see her older sister, and she said, "Hey, sister, I don't have any food." And the older sister was like, "Well, what were you doing during the summertime? You should have been gathering." And she was like, "Well, I was singing and dancing." So the older sister gave her a snake skin and said, "Well, you go out there and you gather what you can, and no more singing and dancing." So that story right there, it kind of sounds like to me like the Aesop's fable, the grasshopper and the ant. It's kind of the same premise. But I heard that story, and to me, I just took it as you have an opportunity to. For me personally, I need to go out and work hard, to achieve my goals. I can't spend all my time, playing and doing whatever. So it had meaning to me. And this story was told to us, a group of basketball players, by an Omaha elder. And this was in this was in Macy, Nebraska. Let me take that back. That was in Walt Hill where that happened. And anyhow, it was an important story for me because at that time I was in my early to mid 20s, and that's that transitional period between you go out and have fun, or you put your nose at a grindstone and get to work, and it kind of helped push me in that direction to get serious with my life.
That kind of rolls into my next question. Especially with the book that you had coming. I mean, you had the inspiration, but you at that time you lacked the research, the subjects. I mean, you heard all the stories, but how did that come to be? How were you able to, start the research? We know you started with your grandma, and maybe you have heard stories from around the tribes in Southwest Oklahoma, but with your book, it covers all over the place. So how were you able to do that?
And it's amazing what basketball has done for me, because basketball got me my education. It's gotten me so far, and even with the book, it had a big hand in that. When I was traveling, just to different reservations, whether it was going to Tohola, Washington, or going to the Robinson Ranch Rio Grande Pomo Indians, it was basketball was taking me to places I'd never been. And the thing with natives, we all enjoy sharing stories for the most part, and that's how it started. It was just through basketball, pretty much. Traveling to Mvskoke down in Florida, traveling to upstate New York, just pretty much the basketball circuit kind of allowed me to gather as many stories as more stories than I thought I'd ever get, and I've had a chance to share a lot of the Kiowa stories and Wichita stories that I know from my part of Oklahoma. So it's been, again, basketball has been a blessing for me, because it's allowed me to bring this book, together.
Well, it seems like basketball is the one language that all tribes speak.
Yeah.
Right.
And that's like a very convenient vehicle for you to be able to get around. In your experience in meeting these different people, did you notice a marked difference in the stories, say, from the Mvskokes as compared to perhaps the Lakotas or somebody from one of the Pueblos or something like that?
Yeah, it just depends on what we were talking about. The owl, for example. In Oklahoma, for the most part, the owl is considered a bad luck or bad omen.
Yeah.
I know in eastern Oklahoma, the owl is considered, it could be a witch, it could be a Stigini, or in my part of Oklahoma, an owl was considered a messenger of death.
Right.
When I went north, I was firefighting in Montana, and we were up there with some of those tribes, and we heard an owl, and they go, "Oh, that's good luck." And we were like, and the group I was with were Kiowa. We were like, "Really?" Like, yeah, it's good luck. So we had a difference in some of our stories, I guess you could say. But there's a lot of things that are very very similar. Our beliefs in little people, our beliefs in our giants, water monsters. Those are pretty much universal. It seems like amongst almost all the tribes I've talked to, there's always that fear of something in the water that can get you. Whether it's a tie snake, whether it's the uktina, whether it's the Mishenomac. There's something pretty much everywhere you go. There's something about the water, and then the opposite. The sky, whether it's the enemies of the water were water monsters were the thunderbird or Hinon the thunderer. There was just all these different spirits of the sky that were at war with spirits of the water.
Let me ask you about Bigfoot. That's kind of a hot topic on a lot of these TV reality-type programs and things like that. And whenever they're near a reservation, whether it's like Umatilla or Colville or so, one of the Southwest tribes, they always mention that the local tribe had a word for this creature. Mm-hmm. Now, did you find that to be the case? I mean, was that particular entity something that popped up around the nation for you?
And when I went up to the Northwest, when I was up at Quinault, they were just like matter of fact, like, oh yeah, they're out there. It was never a question of like, hey, this might be out there. They told me that when their grandparents would be on picking berries on one side of the bush, the Bigfoot would be on the other side with their families picking berries. And it just kind of blew my mind. I was like, really? That's pretty cool, that story. And I ran across my research of giants. A creature called the Nakani. In the description, to me, it sounds like a Bigfoot. I mean, it's a giant, and it would wait around summer camps, and it would grab people when they weren't, unsuspecting. Those people were never seen again. So, and even, in my part of Oklahoma, in southwest Oklahoma, I guess it started about 10 or 15 years ago. There were sightings. It was mostly natives, but then a few non-natives had seen something, and then the cryptozoologists and monster hunters came to our part of Oklahoma and were, doing investigations and stuff. So, I don't know. I've heard from a couple of my uncles that they called the Bigfoot, they called them old Indians, and I guess that's kind of open to interpretation. However you want to see that.
Yeah, there was a lot of the kind of reported sightings and activity down in the southeast, down around Choctaw country, right?
Right.
And I worked for a guy from the Colville Reservation when I was in college, working for a surveyor, cutting brush. And he mentioned the fact that they had stories, and he knew of people who had had encounters, not to get us too far off the track, but he said that the Bigfoot people and the local tribes back in a time immemorial almost were at war with each other, and they finally made peace, and and that's why both of them still exist up there.
Oh, pretty cool. I haven't heard that one. That's an awesome story.
Yeah. It made me kind of look around, wonder what was behind that tree, and this sort of thing.
Hey, TD, when it came to, doing your research for the stories, and like I said, I mean, I've read the book, and there are a lot of great stories and a lot of the similarities between, all across these nations, but were there some stories where you met with any resistance? And when I mean resistance, I mean like, I can tell you about it, but I don't want you to record it. Maybe they were scared right away from right off the bat because they were going to talk about that story or anything like that.
Yeah, I was lucky to have gotten as many Navajo stories as I did, and that's where I'm really careful. I don't want to call the Navajo stories myth, because they're still really strong in their beliefs, in Navajo country. And I was fortunate enough to, again, through basketball, meet some interesting people. And I have an aunt who's also Navajo, and I have a friend in Anadarko, Oklahoma, who was able to share a lot of stories with me. But there were some stories when I went out west that, they just would not talk about, and the skinwalker was one of the things that, it's getting prevalent now. But back when I started recording the stories, you didn't hear a lot about it because you weren't supposed to talk about it. It was just something that was kind of taboo, because you talk about something enough, you attract it. That's kind of universal, I think, amongst most tribes. You don't really want to spend a lot of time talking about bad things. You talk about the good things. But yeah, I when I first went out to Navajo country, I didn't get as many stories as I would like, just because it was like, no, we're not going to talk about this. But in the end, I got some good stories. But even then, I'm still, some of those stories I'm going to hang on to. I'm not going to share them, just because out of respect for the people who told me and that, and I don't need any bad luck myself. So.
We understand that, yeah. TD, we're going to take a short break for our listeners, and when we come back, we want you to hang there with us, because when we return from a commercial break, we want you to share a story with us, if that's okay with you.
Sounds great.
It'll be a short pause, so please, we're going to take a short break, and we're going to come back with TD Hill, and he'll be sharing a story with us, so please stay tuned to Mvskoke Radio.
Hi. Am I Native? I don't want people assuming things because I'm Indian. I just want to be me. But how do I live in two worlds? Some guys just check out by doing meth. But that ain't for me. Because I see my family, my friends, my drum making, my future. There are a lot of cool things about being who I am. And meth isn't one of them.
Learn more at ncai.org. A message from the Partnership for a Drug-Free America and the National Congress of American Indians. Who am I? Am I Indian? Just 'cause I'm a girl from the res, don't make things up about me. What if I move away? Then who am I? Some kids try meth just to escape, but then I think about my grandma, my little brother, my beadwork, my poetry, and I think, I like who I am, and I know meth is not for me.
Check out ncai.org, a message from the Partnership for a Drug-Free America and the National Congress of American Indians.
Welcome back to Mvskoke Radio. Gary Fife, Darren, DeLaune, and we're speaking with TD Hill, and we're talking about how he got his new book came to be, The Age of Myth and Legends, Book 1, Monsters. So, TD, we were wanting to speak with you about, do you have a story that you could possibly tell our listeners?
Yeah, I'll keep it short. I'm not going to read it out of the book because I use too many words in the book. So
I think we as journalists do that too sometimes. So we know what you're going through.
Right. No, I heard a really interesting story when I was in White Earth. This was in up north in Minnesota, and it's about the Wendigo. And I'd spoken about this last time I was on your show. Is that it's monster that's kind of been, commandeered by non-natives. So if you Google Wendigo, you're going to see these weird-looking monsters and stuff. But that really wasn't what it was, though. It was in essence, it was a spirit. I'm going to give you kind of a background before I tell the story. It was a spirit that could take over an individual, and it could do it in a dream. Sometimes even seeing it out in the wild, it could take you over. But once it took over this person would grow into like a giant, and their body was covered with ice. So they were kind of like an ice giant, I guess you could say. But inside that giant body was the normal human body. So that's kind of the background before I tell this story. Okay, so this story happened, well before, European contact. There were a group of people that were living on one of the Great Lakes. In this tribe, there was a young couple, and they were blessed with a baby boy. And the entire tribe was happy for him. This is a beautiful baby. But the baby was different, though. He would never speak. And he, at times, whenever people were talking around him, he would look at them like he knew what they were saying. He could understand it, but he was too little. He should be too little to understand it. So as time went on, the mother started to feel like something wasn't right. Something was wrong with her baby. So she started asking people, hey, what can I do? And this old woman came to visit her and said, well, there's a Manado, which is a spirit, a good spirit. He lives over by the lake. You can talk to him. You can, give him payment. He'll come and he'll put medicine on your baby. Your baby will be good. And so he's really powerful. So the mother thanked the old woman. The old woman left. The baby was watching that entire time, and then the baby, shouldn't be able to speak. But he said, So who is this Manado? So someday I'm going to go visit him. And the mother just totally, just dread gripped her. She was just afraid. And she looked at her baby and she said, hey, you shouldn't be speaking, don't speak like that about a holy person. And the baby was quiet, but the mother was wanting to run out into the village and tell, hey, my baby's talking, but she was afraid to because people would think she's crazy. So she knew something wasn't right, but she tried to forget about it, and she didn't tell her husband. So that next night, everything was normal. They went to bed. The mother woke up because she knew something wasn't right, and she looked at her baby, and the baby was gone. The cradle board was gone. So she frantically woke her husband up, and the husband woke up the villagers, and they all started looking everywhere for this baby, and they found tracks. And they started following these tracks, and the tracks were going towards the lake. And the more they followed the tracks started to change. It started getting bigger and heavier. And then they noticed a broken cradle board. And at that time, some of the people were like, well, maybe it was an animal that got it. But most of the old people were like, they knew what was happening. They knew this was no longer a baby, that it was a Wendigo, and they ran back. A few of the younger people were determined to go and follow these tracks to see what happened. So sure enough, this baby had turned into a Wendigo and was going to go and try to go after this spirit that lived at this lake. What they didn't know, though, is that at the lake, this Manado had a bunch of little people who protected him. And they heard the ground, rumbling when this big monster was walking towards their home. And the little people, they're masters of the earth. Like when they pick up a stone and throw it, it can become a lightning bolt. When they pick up a branch and throw it, it can become a fiery missile. So as it got closer, the little people ran out to fight it. And the people that were coming to find the baby to see what happened, to them it looked like a mountain was getting attacked by, lightning and fire and thunder, and the ground was shaking, and everyone was scared. Then all of a sudden everything got quiet. And the mother and the father were determined to go, so they went to the lake, and they found this big body laying there, and the center of that body was their baby, and baby was dead. And this Manado, the spirit, came out and told them, said, hey, said, I'm sorry for your loss, but your baby was a Wendigo. And they said if it had gone on, he would have eaten us all. And that's the end of the story. So when I first heard that, all of us were quiet, like, oh, you don't know what to make of that, because it's such an interesting story. You don't hear about babies becoming monsters and, little people fighting monsters. And it's just that's one of the stories that I wrote in the book, and it just kind of jumped out at me,
I'm going to have to check with my wife on that one. She is White Earth from Minnesota.
Cool.
So, do you ever hear this story? We get a frying pan bounced off my head or something.
TD, I mean, like I said, that's a great story. And another thing, the babies with becoming monsters, I have seen that. I have seen that, and now that's just a joke, TD. I play it. We spoke about with you're meeting the resistance with some tribes, the Navajos, correct?
Right.
With that, was there also? I know you had to come up with and trying to talk to some people. Were there some that were open, and when open to speak to you? Were they able to did they tell you a bunch of stories, or did they tell you too much, or was there any moments of being overwhelmed?
No, for me, I really, I really enjoy these stories. I feel like there's lessons in there for us, and some of the stories you find, I guess you could say they're not in the right context. You're never really going to understand them as well as a tribal member would. But no, I think for the most part, the people that have shared the most stories with me have been younger people, and which to me that's a good thing. It means the stories are still alive. They're still going on, But I feel like our generation, we need to do a better job of preserving as many stories as we can, because I said this last time. When my grandmother passed away, I wish that I recorded more stories from her. I wish that I learned more from her while she was here, because those stories are gone forever, And anytime we lose a tribal elder, that happens. And I think that, we have a responsibility to do as much as we can to preserve as much of the stories, as much of our culture as possible. So, but getting back to your question, I've been lucky to have had as many people share the stories with me, and then still are. I've still had people that sometimes will contact me on Facebook or whatever. It's like, hey, have you heard of this or heard of that? And we'll share stories. That's how it should be. It's not just me taking and claiming these stories, but really me sharing them.
Let me ask you a kind of an odd question here. Have you ever heard a story? Had somebody tell you something that you wish you hadn't heard?
Yes. There's. I kind of get into I guess you could say I don't want to call it folklore, but they don't have the same kind of weight as some of the old stories, But when I was growing up in Southwest Oklahoma, my grandmother used to say, you don't whistle at night. You don't throw stuff at night. And you whistle, you can call things to you, And when you throw things, it'll come back to you. And I know I'm not sure if it's prevalent in eastern Oklahoma, but in my part of Oklahoma, if you hear something in your back seat, you're not supposed to look. If you're driving by yourself, you're supposed to pray or whatever. Because if you look, your face can become twisted. And I know it's a weird concept, and I've had non-natives ask me, what does that mean? And I said, I don't know how to explain it outside of maybe a seizure or whatever, or Bell's palsy or something, but your face can change, So when I grew up, I kind of, I grew up with a healthy fear of the dark, and some of these stories that I've heard, now, it kind of, not saying I'm afraid of the dark, but I'm a little bit more cautious, I guess, especially going places I don't know,
I am now. Thank you, Tate.
Right. Now, I think I had heard some similar material from some folks I knew back on the East Coast, the Mohawks and Senecas, and those talked about booger masks that happened when people did the wrong thing and their face got twisted.
Mm-hmm.
All right.
We heard that. It is prevalent in eastern Oklahoma and northeast Oklahoma about the whistling in the dark.
Right.
We've heard that. That calls up spirits.
Right.
And
right.
My mother used to tell me that all the time, because for a while I couldn't whistle forever, but when I did, I didn't stop, and I knew that was a mistake. And when she finally told me that ceased all operation on my whistling, especially in nighttime. But TD, I want to get back to the book. The title of it is The Age of Myths and Legends, Book 1. So that just automatically tells us that there's more books coming to it. What's the next book and coming into that order? And also another question that's going to roll into that, the artwork. On the first one, the artwork was amazing. And will there be more? Yeah, will there be more artwork for that's going to be with, I guess, book 2?
Yes. book 2, I guess you could say, is the other side of the coin. It's about the heroes. I touched on a little bit earlier, about Hercules and the comparisons here, because we have heroes that were every bit as strong, every bit as powerful as he was in this country. So I wanted to do, the counterpart. Whether we're talking about Manibus, who was a little bit of everything, I guess you could say. He had really strong medicine. He was physically strong. He could do anything anything that Hercules could do. He killed a creature called the Machinomac. It was a fish that its skin was too hard, so he allowed himself to be swallowed and killed the fish from the inside out. So I'm really looking forward to seeing, that brought into being. This next book, it's not just me doing the artwork this time. I did the artwork for the first book myself, and it took, quite a while. And I'm a better artist than writer, and I would say my writing is my artwork is mediocre at best. So I knew that my books had to have a lot of artwork in them. I thought they'd be more accessible to younger readers, as opposed to just the more, straightforward, this happened. So the next book, I have some younger artists that are working with me from 2 are First Nations people. One is, another one's Ojibwe from the Chicago area. I have another one from out west in Arizona. So I'm really looking forward to seeing what we can do together as a group with some of these stories. It'll be different styles of art, different interpretations, how I would, create something. Another artist is going to have a totally different take. So I'm super excited to see how this one's going to turn out.
We're super excited to hear about that, too. I mean, like I said, I've read the first one. I'm pretty sure Gary's going to be doing that, reading it, too, here pretty soon.
Yes, sir.
We're very, very fortunate to have you on the show today, so thank you on that one. Another thing about that, how are people able to get a hold of this book?
So it'll be on Amazon. That's probably the best way, or you can go to my own website, which is www.nativetales.com. Now, I didn't quite like the typesetting of the book, the print version, so I'm actually having it redone. And the print version will be available February 25th. But the ebook is available now. And again, the best way to get that is just, through my website or through Amazon.com.
With, like I said, when we talked about doing the research, I mean, that took a lot of time, took a lot of patience. Sound like this is going to make it something great for you in your eyes as well as the reader's eyes. This takes patience as well.
It does. It's been a headache getting something from pretty much from recording up into print, but it's been well worth it though. And I'm hoping that down the road, some of your listeners or some of the people that find the website, whether they're younger, older, doesn't matter. I'm hoping that I inspire them to go out and start recording their stories and start, writing them as well. I mean, I'd love to read a book from Mr. Fife or from yourself or anybody else in Eastern Oklahoma, because I don't know as much as I would like, about, the Mvskoke Creek and the tribes in Eastern Oklahoma. And there's really not a lot out there, for, mythology or folklore, and I'm hoping that other people will be like, well, this guy did it, I can do it too.
With when you're talking about recording these stories, could all eventually, like these books that you have, could they be audio versions? I mean, is that like one of the goals, like that you have set out?
There's tools out there like that. I've been bouncing around with that idea, but I don't think I have the voice for it. So if I could get someone like Mr. Fife or someone who has a great storytelling voice, I'd definitely be interested in it.
He already raised his hand in the air, so you probably got a volunteer right there.
Sure, I've told a few stories in my life. Yeah. Now, what's been the reaction to your piece here? Have you been able to gauge who's buying it, and perhaps any reviews or anything like that?
Yeah, interesting thing. Since I did your show last time, I have a corresponding Facebook with the website. And that thing has jumped up from, I think I had about a little over 400 followers. Now I have over 1,000 followers. And Amazon does have tools where I can see, where my book ranks. And when I first started, I was way down there. I mean, you have like a million, literally like a million books in a particular area. I've jumped up into the 300,000s, which that's much better than it was being at the very bottom. So
yeah, about 700,000, I'd say. Yeah.
Yeah. So I've been really fortunate that people are starting to take an interest in it, and I haven't really marketed it yet. I haven't really put it out there, with the exception of what I've had the chance to do with you guys, and then just on social media. But once the print version is available, then I'm really going to start saying, hey, I've got a book. Hopefully you like it. So.
With book 2, when you're talking about those, the heroes, is that already in the works, or is that still in planning stages, or has the writing commenced?
I have some notes, and I haven't actually written a cohesive. How to put this? I have bits and pieces of the stories, but I haven't put them together in a cohesive unit, I guess you could say. So I have stories about Hinon, I have stories about the Thunderbird, and stories about Queso Watts, and I just haven't put them together. But I have an idea of how I'm going to do it. It's going to be a chapter on the Monster Slayers, a chapter on the Lords of Thunder, which would be the Thunderbirds and Hinon. There's a chapter on animal heroes, because there are a lot of stories about animals that play the role of not just trickster, or they're kind of that myth. I mean, I kind of in that area between a hero and trickster, I guess you could say. And there are many women heroes out there also. So I have an idea of how I'm going to do it. I would say I'm past the planning stage. I'm just in the implementing stage, I guess you could say.
With you're talking about Thunderbirds, and I hope I'm saying it right, Queso Watts, is that correct?
Yes.
Okay, what tribe is that for our listeners? What tribe does that belong to? Because I know some will probably be interested to, hear more about that, or even trying to do their research too.
Right. Queso Watts is out west, Zia in the Pueblo, and he was a chief, and he gained fame for killing Scoyo. Scoyo is their word for giant, and there's I don't have time to get into it, but there's a whole story where giants came from in the Zia, with those tribes out that way. Thunderbirds were mostly northern tribes, but they're still, I would say they've made their way across almost all tribes, if that makes any sense. We all have stories about the thunder. Hinon, he's also northern. There's some Ojibwe stories about him. There's some Huron stories about him, but he has a different name with the Huron. And that's been the tricky part, is some of the heroes are kind of universal, but they have different names. And there's different ways to pronounce their name based on who the speaker is, if that makes any sense.
Yeah.
So it's been a learning experience, not just learning the stories, but learning where they came from, and the correct pronunciation, and then how to use it. So it's been a great experience so far.
TD, let me ask you a question here about the process. What does it take to write a book, I guess, or what steps did you take in putting this material together? Did you have it all planned out, or is it kind of go by chapter, or start in the middle and then write the beginning and the end? What was your process?
The hardest part for me was actually I had so many stories. The hardest part was just trying to figure out, okay, what can I leave, what can I take out? So once I had an idea, a format of my chapters, I knew I wanted to do a chapter on water monsters, I wanted to do a chapter on giants, I wanted to do a chapter on little people. Once I had my chapters broke down, it was just a simple matter of, okay, I'm going to use this story, and this story. The writing process itself is just a lot of typing all day.
Yes, we know that too well. Yeah.
Once I did that, it was just a lot of research from there. I knew that I did not want to go through a traditional publisher, just because it's in this day and age, you don't really need a traditional publisher anymore. Anybody can write a book. I mean, it's just a matter of knowing how to do it, what to do. And for me, it was just a lot of research. I found out that I could self-publish, and I figured that was the best route to go. I built an author platform, which is just a website. Social media is good, but you don't own the content once it's on social media. It's theirs. So to be careful about social media. After I did that, I started researching what two groups I wanted to go with, because all books in this country, for the most part, are published through two companies, and that's what most people don't know. One is Ingram Spark, and the other one is CreateSpace, which is owned by Amazon. So if you want to write a book and you want to be in a bookstore, you would not go with CreateSpace because they're a direct competitor to bookstores, and bookstores aren't going to use CreateSpace.
Mm-hmm.
So your best bet's to go with Ingram Spark. And once you find all that stuff out, you write your book, you format it. It has to be turned into, if you want to use it as an ebook, it's got to be turned into one or two different type of files, a Mobi file or an EPUB. You send that to Amazon, and after that, you've got a book. I mean, it's that simple. So I'm hoping that, I get, messages and letters from people like, hey, I've got a book, native book. How do I do it? I would love to put something like that on my website also, like, hey, this is how you get, I want to read more stories. Just as a fan of our stories, so I'm hoping that, it'll inspire people to do it too. Because I'm not nothing special myself, and I have a book, so there's no reason why other people can't either.
Yeah. Unfortunately, TD, wish we could talk to you. We could probably talk another hour just on this, but we will have to go and move on to our next segment. So we want to thank you very much for taking the time out of your busy day and your busy schedule, being able to talk with Mvskoke Radio.
Oh, this has been awesome. Thank you again for having me. This was a great experience.
Mado.
Thank you, TD, and you have a great day.
You too.
All right, we're moving right along to our community announcements. Let's go ahead and get started. I'm going to go ahead and go with Duck Creek Ceremonial Ground fundraiser this Saturday, February 4th. Food sale begins at 1:30, and the grocery bingo begins at 2. For more information, contact Mr. Felix Brown Jr. at 918-504-0215.
And if your mouth is watering for wild onions, Defumbachi, Indian Fellowship Church in West Tulsa there, Oakhurst, part of Tulsa, 6130 South 58th West Avenue this Saturday. Plates are $10 if you're interested. Might want to check that out, look them up, find them on the map there. Or you can give them a call, 918-313-6945.
School program has already commenced. It started January 2nd. It goes to December 29th of this year. Where do you get an application? You can either get it from the school clothing office in Okmulgee, 2971 Northwood Drive, or Southern Regional Office at 333 South Washita in Wetumpka, or Jinx Social Service Office, 715 West Main in Suite D. And for more information on that, please contact 918-549-2473.
The folks running this year's Mvskoke Creek Nation Challenge Bowl are still looking for volunteers to help them out in the 2017 Challenge Bowl competition. That will be taking place at the College of the Mvskoke Nation. Now, there is a great need for Mvskoke language speaker volunteers, as well as other official positions. If you would like to be a part of this wonderful annual competition, give them a call. You want to talk to Melinda Deeringwater, the volunteer coordinator, 918-549-2521. Now, the first competition starts on the 3rd of February, so you might want to get along there if you want to help them out. All right, and a reminder here, although it's nice and shiny today, it's still wintertime, and some people may need some help on the low-income home energy assistance program is still being run and opened for applications. If you need some help or know somebody that does, call the energy program at 918-549-2483. That's it for me.
That's it for me, too. We wanted to, again, thank T.D. Hill for
that was fun.
The Age of Myth and Legends.
It's a nice break from what we usually cover, things we sort of have to do, but
things that have been going on the last couple of weeks. So yeah, it's kind of like another turn in the road that we were able to do. So
yeah. This time we didn't hear stories that leave us running down the road.
And it's in the daytime too, so that helped out a lot better.
Yeah, so we're real happy to hear that. Let's see what else we got coming up next week. We're going to be talking with
Coach Slim, Jared Horath for the Sweetheart Showdown, which will be showcasing at the Brock Gym February 11th. There'll be an all-girl fight card. Don't want to miss that. Don't want to miss the episode where we talk to them about it.
Okay. Well, that's Mvskoke Radio for this week. Madul Mabu Hedgetskut. This is Gary Fife. I just want to say thank you.
Darren DeLaune, thank you very much.
See you next week. been listening to Mvskoke Radio. Join us again next week for more local, tribal, and community news and updates. Madot.